people are fed up of AI content, and people are fed up of, you can tell it's not authentic. And I think that leads us to something else, which is about the role of the marketer versus the role of the AI, and how the two come together in order to make sure that, what we're feeding in there is authentic, how we keep that emotional connection, how we keep the relevance of our ads, of our content, of our website, whatever it is we're doing, at the same time as kind of benefiting from the automation and the kind of efficiencies of AI. Mario,
well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is basically my day-to-day task. Basically as a content person, this is what we normally do when we train the agents, the assistant, and so on and so on. Of course, I mean, one thing that I think it will be beneficial for everyone, and this is like the difference between agentivity and automation. Sometimes these two concepts overlap, but it's not always the case. Basically, automation, what we think about automation is like, I will make a simple example. Diego sends me an email, and I teach any kind of tool to send me a notification every time Diego writes to me. Let's say that Diego sends me a message on Teams. I say to power automate in Microsoft in Teams, say, hey, every time Diego sends me a message, please send me an email. This is automation, because no matter what, one system triggers another, right? And then basically this automation. No human involvement, machines just think, bits converted into a trigger and then goes on. Agentivity is a little different. Agentivity means that basically there is like a large language model reasoning, and it could be something like, Diego sends me a message, please understand what Diego is writing to me and decide if it's worth sending an email or not. This is a completely different level, because then the agent should read the message, understand the purpose and the meaning of the message, of the message, and decide if sending me a notification or not. So basically, if Diego is sending me, hey Mario, what's up? No email. Hey Mario, what are you doing for holidays? No email. Hey Mario, we forgot to deliver this to a client. Absolutely, the email should be sent in that exact moment. So the point is, what we're bringing in this moment is that we have like a layer that is not purely automation. There is like a large language model that is trying to mimic the human reasoning. And this entails the human presence in this, because this is the training, meaning that we can use a large language model. However, we need to teach it how to reason, what to think of, and how to proceed to the next step. And this requires the human involvement, because this is not purely automation. So whenever you approach an agent, you approach an assistant, you approach a large language model, you basically need to write the proper instructions, create the proper knowledge set, as Diego was mentioning, the retrieval augmented generation, the RAG, and create the proper memory for the assistant or agent or LLM. At the end of the day, what you're doing is basically saying, okay, you have the potential ability to scan and parse something and create association. You should teach it how to do that. And this is what is called training. You write instructions, you teach it how to filter, you teach it what is important, what can be skipped, what can be left out, what should be preserved, and also you need to give a lot of examples, as Diego was mentioning. Basically, say, if you need to write good content for me is this. You cannot just say, hey, ChatGPT, Gemini, write a good piece of content. That's it. I think you can write it. You write following these instructions. Good content for me is this. And it's not just one example, more examples. And also you say, basically, whenever you do something, you follow this intake brief and this formatting for the output. So you're teaching an intern. And this is like a human activity. This is not an AI activity, right? Only following a specific protocol and a specific process, agentivity can add something to automation. But remember, there are two different tasks. Automation is letting the machines talk together without human intervention, and this is a whole different task. Agentivity is teaching one powerful engine what to do in every kind of situation, following a protocol that you establish. And the protocol needs best practices, brief, governance, guidance, knowledge set, and data integration. And you can see why humans are more than important. Nobody is going to be replaced if you have this in mind, because you're not talking about just having the machine talk to each other in the automation sense. You're having agents that are trying to resemble and mirror as close as possible what is your strategy. But the strategy is coming from you. And you basically are infusing your knowledge in a process, but you control the knowledge and the process. That's why I'm saying tools will be obsolete in 6 months all the time, because at the end of the day, it depends on you, what are like your vision, and how you infuse that knowledge into the system to have great results. And this is basically the difference that AI is going to bring to the market. This is not automation. There is something more. And that piece requires a lot of human intervention. And this is basically where all the consultancy, all the productivity, all the product, the building with AI will require humans, good experts, to infuse and control all of that. Only if you think that you just need 1,000 blog articles in one day, you just need automation in that case. Hope it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, and to me, what is important on what you're saying is that sometimes companies want to go from 0 to full agentivity in one day, and there is a journey that we talk about the data. First, you need to automate some things, right? Because you want to start with what is more painful today, and then after that, you go to the next step. So don't try to run too early, because then you fall, right? So, and for that, what you said at the beginning, Mario, is very, very important, because we have a lot of experience on these implementations, and we know what's step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on and so forth.
Mario hit it on the head. He really hit it on the head when he was talking about how this is a main part of his work. I mean, this is a critical part of the paid media side as well, because these platforms have become so incredibly powerful, right? So they can automate bidding, they can optimize placements, and they can find efficiencies that we simply can't match as humans anymore. But we have to remember that an algorithm doesn't understand why a customer chooses you over a competitor, or what specific emotional trigger actually leads to a purchase. These AI things, they follow data patterns. They follow numbers and symbols and code. They're not human motivators. If we don't provide the right information and a deep understanding of the audience's actual pain points, then the AI is just simply going to scale the wrong message and scale it very fast. I think a lot of us have seen what happens when campaigns run without human oversight, and the results often feel robotic and they feel disconnected from the brand sometimes. So as marketers, people should value marketers because it's not just about pulling manual levers, right? It's about the actual strategy itself. It's about knowing exactly where the audience spends their time, what they actually want, what message will resonate with them on a very personal human level. You can automate the delivery and the logistics, and you should, but you can't automate genuine human connection, at least not yet, right? So what I try to work on every day is providing the who and the what, and that's the core strategy and the creative vision, and then I let AI handle the how, which ensures that we're reaching people in an efficient way.
I think you've actually helpfully just answered a question that came in the chat there, which was basically saying which part of our marketing strategy should never be fully automated and why. And I think, both all of you really have answered it there, which is the kind of the real human element, the who, the reasons behind, the kind of motivations of your audience. All of that part has to come from research, has to come from understanding your customers, understanding your product, understanding your business, and putting that into language and into a meaning that makes sense for those people, and then letting elements of it be used automated after that. But I think that's definitely true. Are there any other things you would add to that in terms of what you should never automate, where you need to really be careful when it comes to using tools and automation? I mean, all of it you have to check, you have to have a role in, but is there anything else that you think maybe where you see it happen but think it shouldn't?
I mean, from my perspective, content-wise, I'm talking about content and marketing, it's basically never deliver something that is purely AI generated. Not because AI has a good quality level. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use AI. However, the core technology, the inner kind of transformer technology of generative AI will never lead to controlled knowledge, at least with the current architecture. So you always risk that the AI can provide you with guesswork or assumptions that sometimes are just out of the, let's say, brand guardrails, sometimes go to hallucinations, meaning that basically, no, it's trying to predict the next word and the next piece of content, and sometimes doesn't have enough knowledge or enough kind of context, and will say, from a statistical perspective, this is the right thing to tell you, but potentially it is completely off, completely wrong, and maybe it's using also words or concepts that are not there. So the point is, it's a beautiful tool, but remember, this is like fire. Fire needs to be controlled. So, and it's like everything in technology. So I will never use AI as like a go-to-market thing. It's more like for empowering and as a productive tool, as a vibing tool. Vibing is like the right word for me with AI, where you vibe with AI in order to find solutions, to brainstorm, to empower your visions and stuff, but never let AI go directly to market with anything, because this going to market, to me, is 100% a human activity at the moment.
Nice.
I would always add a human in the loop, definitely, to make sure that the things are right. And we're all reading and hearing and watching things that AI do on their own, and we're thinking, how come these people can do it and let AI do this stuff? So basically, don't do it. Just have that human oversight, and just make sure that wherever you're, especially sending out of your company, that needs to be validated. That's very, very important.
I often think of some of the clients that we have internally. One of the clients that we work with is a hospital, a major hospital. One is a major financial institution. So when I think of things that should never be fully AI, I think of financial institutions types of things, and I think of banking, that kind of stuff, because you run into for banking, like risk and compliance, right? So AI can be incredibly biased based on the historical data that's fed. So in banking, if an algorithm is left to its own devices to determine the credit worthiness of a loan or whatever, it can inadvertently bake in systemic biases that lead to legal and ethical disasters. Humans have to provide the oversight to ensure the fairness, and that's not just a data point, it's a reflected value. And in healthcare, I think of patient safety. In healthcare, AI might be able to spot a pattern in a scan, but it can't deliver a diagnosis with empathy or ethical context required for patient care. There is a human feel to medical strategy that, if it's lost to automation, it can often lead to bad results and a breakdown of trust between the provider and the patient. And the last thing is the data governance and the privacy side of things. Both healthcare and financial institutions rely on the absolute security of structured, organized company data. So AI can help process that data, but humans must be the ones to define the governance and the ethical guardrails to ensure that sensitive personal information isn't being used in ways that violate privacy or trust.